Okay, I'm having a wonderful time, really. I really am in Cote d'Ivoire. I want to tell you about it, but I'm not. I'm going to tell you instead about dashboards and making dashboards. Now, you might not think this is a very good dashboard. I frankly have no clue. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take different budget accounts. So this could be a list of 1,000 budget accounts. I just put a few here. This is the conference keys. Fees. I took some accounts that were related to training. Okay, and we're going to take some other accounts, and we're going to see in one little picture how much our budget should be. Now we've got some history and some forecast. We're going to make it nice and flexible. Excuse me, this is just an introduction. And then we can either kind of apply input data or apply different forecasting techniques and see what happens to our budget. Now, if we don't apply forecasting techniques, here's what we can do. We can say, let's just take last year's average. Let's see what happens then. Or we can put a little trend regression in and see what happens then. Or we can take a multi-year average and see what happens then, okay? Or we can put our input back. So let's use a regression analysis. And then we can see, well, okay, here's what we would get if we did our budget, but if now we can say, okay, no, I want to apply some input data. Okay. And if I apply the input data, what I want to do is be able to change this budget and really just see what happens. And I want to be able to see what happens to the overall budget as well as just what happens to the individual account. And then I might want to say, oh, look, it's very seasonal, this account, or maybe it's not. So I want a little checkbox that checks it so it either is seasonal or not seasonal. And then I show it on the graph and all that. Isn't that exciting? Oh my gosh. There are a few new concepts in here. This waterfall graph I need to tell you about. It's one of the saddest stories. I spent so much time on making an automated, what I thought was really a cool waterfall chart, and here comes 2000 Excel 16. And those horrible people put it in there. It's the only big change in 2016 from 2015. Now, most of this is pretty straightforward. This is just using the index function. And this has just a true-false switch, so we just are able to show kind of different methods depending on how we do this. Now, let's take this one, and let's say that the last kind of one is the travel. And travel was really high kind of in this last year. So if we have a regression, we'll make a trend. If we use a multi-year average, then we have a much bigger thing. Or if we're really mean, we say, no, I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut the budget for this one. And here it shows you what the averages were for the last year, for the average from 2008, and for the trend forecast. Okay? Those are some of the things maybe you want to do. You could imagine sitting down with some executive, God knows who. You go through, do we want to apply a seasonal factor to this or just have it flat for the year? How do we negotiate this budget? Let's put it here, and let's see what the effect on our total budget is then when we change this. Whoops, I have to apply the input data to do that. So if I change this around, we'll do that. Now here's the only really new trick with all of this. This is just index stuff. This is just application of a switch. But this and this and this, those three things are hard. Because when I change the accounts, and we can just kind of flip through all the accounts, when I change all the accounts, what I want is to be able to then apply this spinner box, but this spinner box usually fits in one value. So I want to be able to apply this spinner box to a different value. And that's the new thing. And you have to put a little macro on this spinner box. That's the only way you can kind of do it in a fancy way. All right, and to review this now. Now what I'm going to do is make a couple of more videos. Some people, I used to think dashboards or cockpits. What a stupid thing to do. Ugh. My son got a job. Make a dashboard. Oh, I thought, what a waste.
Come on.
Hello.
Oh,
Good. I was a little bit interrupted. Sorry, it took a day to get back to where I am. But remember this. So here's our dashboard. Now to get the dashboard, step one is just getting all the data. This is just some SAP data that could have thousands of different line items. And then you make a pivot table and decide, well, which is our summary? How are we going to summarize this? And when you make a pivot table, I'm not going to go through that because I'm so bad at it. You make it with the different years and the months. The key thing is to get the history. In this case, there was some issue with the data, so we just went through 2008, 9, 10, 11, and pretend we're making a forecast for that. And then we go through and make our forecast, and this number over here, this is a trend function. You use the sum if a whole bunch on this kind of stuff. You use the average if, and you take the same line. Okay, you use the average if and take the same line and get a sum for all the years. And then you can compute your trend from the annual data. Whoops, that's the growth rate. You can use the trend function in Excel. That's fairly simple. And then again, going back to our dashboard, then we can put it all together. This was made with our Shift Control V. I think I said this. And then we can use the average if to get the seasonal factor. I'm just pressing Control R. That was a conditional format that I just showed you. But we can kind of take the average by month, use the average if this time by month. And this is the months of the forecast. So we take the average divided by the total average of everything and get our monthly factor and just multiply our forecast by that. So that's how it all works. You can see this. I'm putting this on a website. Okay. Now on this file, by the way, I'm sorry. I think this was something we did in a class. And here I'm going to show you in the second video now. I'm going to show you how you could just do the key thing. The key thing behind that dashboard is to be able to change the number of accounts. And then once you change the number of accounts, be able to just quickly put a spinner box around this thing. Now, one of the people in a class, Lydia, she said, oh, when you do all this stuff, give me some simple examples, please. So we have it set up with some simple examples of all the lookup, match, sum if, conditional formatting, some regression analysis, how to make a bubble chart, a waterfall chart, how to do the offset function, and then go through some detailed real-world data with some actuals and budgets and a bubble chart, and then finally a KPI analysis. Okay, so let's click on this. Go to the KPI. This just shows Standard & Poor's, how bad the Lehman Brothers. This was all except Lehman from all these other years. This was the Lehman bankruptcy. We used the read PDF file for this. And then there was a whole benchmarking, which is so similar to the S&P and the credit analysis, and it all uses a lookup function, and an interpolate lookup function is really, really important if you want to do any of this benchmarking analysis. I think I might make a quick video on that. So this kind of shows you that. Now, if you look at this file, this thing, and then some regression, some basic kind of regression analysis. So, and then how to make a frequency distribution chart. And this was a key one, how to really make a a bubble chart say something. In this case, we looked at the loans for the World Bank, and we said, well, what's the population of various countries in Africa, and what's the GDP per capita? That's the size. And we put a little trend line, and if you're above the line, you're getting too many loans relative to your population, and then we can see if you're rich or poor. So here, South Africa got all these loans, and it's a rich country. And DRC was way down here. It's got a bigger population, and it's got a much smaller GDP per capita. I don't know what kind of loans these were anyway. But, okay, and this is just a scatter chart of the same thing, but without the bubble size. Okay, so those are some of the things on this thing. This dashboard, I think, was a big idea, and some of the scatter plots and just how to work with a whole bunch of data. Okay, and that file, that's going to be on. If you go down, I haven't hooked it up yet, actually. It's going to say statistical analysis for finance and budget. I'm going to put and budget, and we're going to put this file, and then the next video is going to be a real explanation on how to do that spinner button where you can select different accounts and still use the spinner button, and I'm going to explain why it is so important just in a minute. So that's the introduction, overview of